Hello guys, welcome to my new video. Let me introduce you this kit from Eduard, which is the famous MiG-21 fighter. It's from Ovetrees kits, so no decals, no instructions, just the plastic, but I have pretty a lot of decals, so I don't mind. So I bought these during the Halloween, so I get the nice little P part of the Halloween. Yeah, it was nice, pretty glad for that. To Eduard, and good points there. Clear parts, as usual in Eduard, all Eduard kits are just famous that they're really clear. You can simply read text which you place inside it, and it's just marvelous. The kit itself looks very good. I found no problems with the plastic whatsoever, and I think it's pretty good molded. Yeah, possibly one of the best MiG-21 fighters in 1:48 scale, if you ask me. And that's also why I choose it, and because it was cheap to buy without decals and instructions, but don't judge me. The instructions can be easily found on the Eduard website. Just search for your kit, click on the icon, and down there you have an instructions in a PDF, so just download it and you can start building models according to it. According to manual, I start with assembling the cockpit and the front gear bay. So the first and most important part is to clean all the parts and scrub them off any imperfections. And then it's just about simply following the steps and building. For gluing, I mostly use Tamiya extra thin cement and sometimes Rebel contact glue. I like to make models as detailed as possible, so therefore I use some copper wires and stretch spruce to create some additional details like wiring and another stuff which I can't even name, but it was in the publication according to which I was building this kit, so yeah, it's mostly from the pictures. I also scratch built the backside of the front gear bay because I found out it's lack of this in the kit. It won't be visible, but I like this small touch. Once again, stretch spruce were used as scratch building construction material in the cockpit. And it's pretty good to use them. They can be easily bent with the Tamiya extra thin cement, so you can basically give them any shape you want, like here as the wires. A small drawback of this kit is that you had to add a piece of plastic card in the cockpit just to fill in the gaps between the panels and the fuselage. It can be tricky, but after some fitting and recutting, it can fit pretty well. So, and you can also detail the side walls as I did with another plastic cards and stretch spruce used as buttons. If you saw my MiG-29 video, you can see that I scratch built almost like the entire ejection seat, which was in the kit, but I had like no problem with this ejection seat in the Eduard's kit. It just fit pretty well. The details are quite good for 1 to 48 scales, and I was just like, yeah, why to scratch build, like it looks good. So I just built it and I was pretty satisfied with the result, even without adding scratch build details. The only thing that I had to scratch build were the seat belts, and this is because I bought only Ovetrees. I think even in the weekend kit and also in the profit pack they are included as a PE part, so I just used some aluminum tape or just common Tamiya tape to create these seat belts. The interior was firstly primed with a flat black color to give it depth afterwards when I will be applying the interior color. I mixed Turkish-Russian cockpit blue or green color from the RIF azure blue and the green-gray cockpit color. So it's not the exact amount, but I was working according to some documentations, and I think I came pretty close. But someone might disagree. But you know, in Soviet Russia, the shade of green chooses you. Ejection seat was painted with a gray color. Painting process was done with the AK acrylic colors, and for painting the details I used a mini brush, but other than that I tried to use airbrush for almost all of the model to achieve the good surface result. After painting, the color was protected with a clear gloss coat. I used Tamiya gloss coat and the acrylic one for this, so that I can use the enamel washes or the oil washes. That's basically same, depends on what you like to use. I just use some kind of a mixture of black and umber brown, and just basically brush it into the model, and afterwards wiped it with a cotton swab or even a piece of a cloth or tissue. Some additional highlights were made with the oil colors, which were mixed into the kind of turquoise color and placed with a toothpick on the enraced surfaces, and then blended with the ordinary brush. After washes I was able to start painting all the details with a brush, so once again I use several colors, which will be like too many to name them, but basically it was some mixtures of mostly the flat black color, aluminium color and some kind of grayish colors for wires. Tunnel more detailed, I used mostly spare decals of the instruments and placed them individually on the spots. After this I moved to construction on the rear gear bay, and the build was pretty straightforward. The details were quite good, but also I would like to add some wires, so I did this. I don't have very much footage of it, nor from the painting of them, which I'm very sorry, I somewhere lost those videos, but nevertheless they are on the finished model, so you will be able to see them at least at the photos at the end. At this point I also decided to cut off these side parts, which were only used on the reconnaissance version of the MiG-29, and they are not on the MF version which I'm building, so I cut them off with a saw and then sanded down the edges. Gear bays were painted with RLM02 color, which I found out to be like most accurate according to photos I had. The manual says that it could be something like grey or greyish green, but you know, I had to work with what I had in my stash and it looks good according to photos, so I just used it. Once again the coat was sealed with a gloss varnish so that I can apply some washes. Next up I built the engine. It comes in a few parts, and the lower part is painted with a Russian bright green just to be precise, and the other part is painted with aluminium. Also the radome is painted with a Russian green. I also added wash from the bronzish animal color. For better adhesion, it's good to scrub off the paint from the contact surfaces, and with this the paint will not be between the plastic parts, and the bond will be much stronger. Some weight in the nose is required, so for this I used air gun pellets. Fixed them with a super glue, and then just for the additional touch and safety I filled the gap with the plastiline. plastics. First you have to cut out the piece of plastic where they should go, then clean it and like sand it and place the new part inside, after which you have to glue it and then use putty to fill all the gaps. So it's quite tricky process, and it's a bad mark for Eduard for this. So if you are like not 100% sure you can do this, better build this kit with a closed air brakes. There was an ugly nasty gap in the back, so I just used some plastic sheet to cover it up, and it was as good as new. But you can expect these problems with the short run kits. To obtain MF variant you have to scribe on one oval panel line, so I used guide made from plastic card for my needle and just scribed it. The first layer of paint was used on the canopy was the turquoise interior color to just add that look of this color from inside, and after that I used the white to make an uneven lines alongside the whole fuselage, and these would act as a disruptive pattern for the camouflage paint. After this, the pre-shading of the main panel lines was done with a Panzergrau color from Tamiya. The undersides were painted with a very whitish blue. I mixed this color like, you know, just by the eye. I don't know this color. I wanted to try to do some kind of lower and more like used color, so I added white even on these lower sides and also on the upper sides of the camouflage to make more like whitened, or the color which was exposed to sun a lot. I also had to apply colors which are something looks like the East German Camouflage, because these aircrafts, as I found out, were bought from the East Germany and then repainted in Czechoslovakia afterwards. And differences between colors used by the East Germany and the Czechoslovakia were a bit different. The Czechoslovakians one were a bit more darker, and also the undersides were gray and not blue. After this paint was sealed with a gloss coat varnish, and afterwards we can get to the funny parts, which was hairspray chipping. I use like ordinary cheap Balea hairspray from the Drogerie Markt. If you have this in your country, like, you can use it. I use the number 4, which is something like Stronghold. I don't know, I just really don't care. I just get some from the shelves in the shop and run home to try it out. So I just evenly spray it on the surface, not too thick, not too thin, just to achieve results I want. And because I'm gonna to do a bit heavy shipping, I used a bit more of it. And as I said, for the paints, the undersides were painted with a grayish color, and the upper sides were once again painted with a kind of new or more bit darker versions of a brown and green color. The process of chipping was like the hardest part of the whole build, because I had to follow the instructions and the photos I found on the internet, and it was just very time consuming. I don't know, I spent about 5 or 6 days working on this, and just going millimeters by millimeters in my free time, and it was just too much, to be honest, but I somehow finished it. I don't know how, but yeah, it was interesting to do this. Also done this during the final match of the World Championship, so you see, it was just in every time opportunity which I had. So all chipping was done with either toothpick or small brush and warm water. For the places where I accidentally scratched too much, I used just the aluminium paint to fill these gaps, and then used gloss coat to finish and to protect the result, which would be pretty bad if I lose this. And afterwards I painted the panels, which were in the different colors than the camouflage paint scheme. Okay, so I miscalculated and only had the old decals in my stash, the old Czechoslovak decals in my stash, so I had to be pretty careful to securely apply them and not to damage them, but it was possible to do. I also used incorrect decal of the RAF emblem, because that should be 310 Squadron, but I didn't have the one, I had just some from the old Tempest, so yeah. And some decals I didn't have at all, so I made the stencils from the Tamiya masking tape and some printouts from the Eduard instruction sheet and placed them on the model afterwards, which I sprayed the color on the model. The gear legs looked a bit dull, so I added some wires from the plastic sprues and copper wires to make them more detailed and therefore like more attractive. I found out this model to be a bit too clean to the, the wear out camouflage I did, so I used some brownish grayish color to do a post shading alongside the alongside the panel lines, and then with just like very light gray and highly diluted color did some highlighting of the insides of these panels, but not like everyone, just like some, I don't know, every third or fourth panel to make it like more disrupted. Seal seems to be applied a bit rough on the pictures, so I just used like my hand and brush to paint this, and then the toothpick to correct my mistakes. And ooh, boy, there were quite a bit of mistakes, as you can see. Ow, that just hurted me as I saw this. Also, some small scratch building on the inside of the canopy was necessary to look more realistic, because it was just plain surface with no details, and I don't like that. After this, I just glued all the small parts which were painted and made separately to the model, and also painted these small parts. And the model was pretty much finished, so it was a good build. I really enjoyed it. It was pretty easy to assemble, and I would totally do the second one if I had to. So enjoy the pictures of the build model. Don't forget to subscribe. I have a lot of projects waiting, and also I want to do something like the airfield diorama in the future with this model, because I found out some crazy pictures. So yeah, stay tuned, and as I said, enjoy the photos and have a nice day.